really great to have you here. Thank you for joining us tonight. And for those of you who don't know Russ Crabtree, if you want to introduce yourself, and apologies that we've just started this again, so hopefully it's all working and we don't have any technical glitches.
So we're on take two, yeah?
We're on take two.
Good evening all, hope you're all safe and well. Right, to give you a bit of an insight into who I am, I've got 30 years experience in the construction industry. Started out at 20 years old, working in a family construction company, worked for multinational companies, so we've worked on everything from small builds, house extensions, renovation work, right through to multi-million-pound commercial builds, and covered pretty much most of the stuff in between. About 7 years ago, I decided to start building a property portfolio. So I got myself educated and then started with the buy-to-lets, quickly moved into commercial to residential developments because of my background in the construction. And a lot of my portfolio is based in that category. Different strategies within commercial to residential developments. So whether it be assisted living, supported living, serviced accommodation, developments to sell out, a lot of the stuff that we do is within that sector of commercial to resi. And
how did you start getting into supported living?
Right, so supported living, I stumbled on it. My background is I've got 3 adopted kids and 1 foster kid, 1 kid from my wife's. So we've dealt a lot with social workers and in the care leavers more so than anything. So that kind of gave me an ethical need for, it gave me a desire to do an ethical property investing. So it's something I was looking for and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with care leavers, and hence I am a trustee of a charity, which I can mention later on. But I wanted to do something. It was one day when we were in the middle of doing a 6-bed conversion. So it was a commercial to 6 1-bed apartments. And I went to look at another property. The estate agent that showed me around that property asked what our exit was, what we intended to do with it. It was a big old British Legion in Tameside in East Manchester. So she was inquiring what we were going to do. I said, I'm going to break this one into 8 1-bed apartments. And she just mentioned that she could possibly have a exit for us via a care leave, by a care provider.
Right.
I didn't know what it was about. It was unknown to me. I was still kind of messing around with buy-to-lets and trying to set up this kind of commercial to residential arm that we were doing. So she gave me some more detail and I thought, well, actually, this sounds really interesting. This might be that kind of ethical investing that I've been looking for. So I said, yeah, I would be interested, but we're halfway through a development just up the road. If they're interested in this, would they be interested in that? So the next thing is half an hour of phone calls. 2 hours later, care provider turns up with all the management team on site of this other development. Come and have a walk around it.
That quickly, wow.
It's unbelievable how these things happen. It's a case of just talking to people, and just having open conversations and being totally honest and open. And that was it. That was the start of a beautiful relationship that we've been able to build over years and years with these guys now. So that was it. That got us in with the care provider. They introduced us to the RP. And basically we've gone from there and gone from strength to strength with providing this much needed accommodation.
And when you say RP, you mean the registered provider?
Registered provider, the housing association, yes.
Yeah, perfect. And so if you were partway through that development, did that cause a problem? Did you have to make many changes to that development or?
Yeah, that's something like I'll come into when we talk a bit more about kind of the structure and process. But yeah, it's always going to cost you a bit more money retrospectively to put in, because when you're just doing a HMO or a 5-bed conversion to a HMO, you'll do pretty much most of the specifications and requirements of a care provider. There may be a few little tweaks, but even if you're doing a 3-bed property for a care provider, if you do it to HMO standard, then that's going to satisfy the bulk of their requirements. When you're doing bigger complex commercial to residential developments, then there's a lot of extra stuff that you need to do to make sure it complies with their requirements, and making sure you tick all the boxes for the QCs. And
these are your tenants in these properties were adults with learning disabilities, were they? Or
yeah, absolutely. So we've got tenants with autism, learning difficulties, mental health issues. That's kind of the bulk of where we're at.
And so some of those will need quite specific adaptations, I would imagine, within the property.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the autism, they need the kind of the breakout spaces, rooms, the lighting, even reinforcement of certain areas of walls and stuff like that, maybe extra padding. There's all sorts. The thing about supported living is it's so broad. It's ridiculous. There is no one size fits all. You have to adapt to the particular care provider that you're working with.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
A homeless specification is going to be completely different from, a mental health or an autism specification.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a broad umbrella, isn't it, when people talk about
absolutely. Yeah. And even the size of the development that you're handing over, one house compared to, could be up to 10, 12 units in one development.
You were talking about this first one. Was this the one you were going to talk to us about in a bit more detail, this development?
Yes, absolutely. I can run through what we bought as the property, how we seeked planning permission, because I think there is a big advantage to using prior approval planning permission for supported living. So if I can give tips on that and some guidance. Brilliant. Again, it kind of links into my specialty of commercial to resi, but it's all to do with room sizes and what is desirable for supported living compared to what you have to provide for normal room standard sizes for a normal run-of-the-mill flip development or,
Brilliant. Yeah, if do you want to start running us through some of that, Russ?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a property that we acquired at auction. This was back in 2015, I think it is. We acquired it at auction. We sought planning permission on this, but we used permitted development prior approval. Now, this is a wonderful thing. If you ever get to see a planning officer speak, especially someone like Linda Wright, she's phenomenal. A lady from around Manchester way. And it was after watching her in one of her talks that she kind of highlighted the advantages of using permitted development prior approval. So it's only 28 days. You're guaranteed a decision at the end of the 28 days. They can seek an extension, but usually they have to make a decision. 52 days, sorry. And if they don't make a decision, then it's deemed granted. So it's great. So all this long drawn out planning permissions of weeks, months, years, there's none of that with using this. Now, one of the biggest advantages of this for assisted living is there is no minimum room sizes. You don't have to comply with the national planning requirements for flats, apartments, room sizes. So some of the first apartments we did were around about the 35 square meters, which on a normal planning approval probably wouldn't go through. So this allowed us to get more units within a building to make the building stack up and work better, which allows us to acquire buildings at a cheaper price because we're going more units.
And your care providers and housing associations are happy with that size? That fits?
Yeah, absolutely, because this particular strategy we do with the mental health and the learning difficulties, they don't want big, overpowering spaces to have to look after. They're quite happy with the nice, confined, small, safe environment. So, you know, we've always been told that the smaller units will work. There are certain cases and certain providers will ask for bigger units. So as I say, there's no situation of one, you know, situation fits all. It just happens that the one that we're working with likes these smaller models. So we got the planning permission, we got it changed from A1 to C3. No, that's the use classes. If people don't know about use classes, I suggest you kind of go on.
Planning's a whole different ball game, isn't it? There's
absolutely, so much learn your planning. Now, a lot of supported living can be under C2 use class. But one of the things that we learned very, very quickly is they like to keep it on C3 because vulnerable people are council tax exempt. So if they take these units on, they like to have the exempt. If you go to C2, then you could be on business rates. So the actual housing associations have always said to us, and again, that's just how they deal with us. Every housing association is different.
Definitely.
We like them to stay on to C3, and we've never had any problem. Councils have no problem. Obviously, they're aware through their commissioner that the property is being used for assisted living, so it seems to tick all the boxes.
Perfect.
It does work for us as well, because everybody knows in this sector, you could literally be halfway through delivering a supported living scheme and the care commissioner could change their mind and scrap it. It happens, you know,
definitely.
Nothing guaranteed. By keeping it in C3 is it will help protect you with other exits.
Right.
So rather than getting the planning permission and only having that one avenue to go, keeping C3 actually helps you with other exits as well.
Fabulous.
So we converted this up into 6 one-bed apartments. The other thing you have to provide in the model that we were doing was care facilities for the 24-hour care that was on site. So that would be a kitchen, an office, a toilet area, all the usual welfare. On our bigger models where we're doing, say, up to 10 apartments, they don't usually ask for an extra apartment for sleeping. If they're on shift work, obviously they should be there caring for people, not sleeping.
Yeah.
So we have to provide that in the model as well. So that was the property we bought. It was 3 shops, 3 retail shops, an old equestrian, and then we just converted it up into 6 units. We also got the 2 further down the street as well, joining it, and converted that up into an extra 4. So in this whole complex, yeah, I think they do it slightly staggered, so it was like a 2-phase.
Right.
We did 1 phase, handed it over, and then did the other phase. So we did a full rip out, standard fittings, Howden kitchens, nice and basic, easy walls for the maintenance, because the housing association in their FRI lease will take responsibility of the decorating and maintenance and everything else. So they don't want high spec, but they don't want cheap.
No.
So I always like to class it as economical fit out. So you can see at the back there, convert it all up. Nice communal areas as well. That's something that we've found with this model, is if you can provide outside communal areas, they do like that in this in this commercial to resi model. So a freestanding building on its own is going to be a lot harder to hand over to these guys unless it's in an absolutely huge demand area. Yeah.
It's about quality of life for people living there, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to see the figures on this, so this one we got at 80,000. We spent about 200 on the refurb on it, and we got a lease for 48k net, and that was
this is for all 10 flats together, is that?
This was for 6.
Yeah.
This is for 6. This isn't including the extra 4. Yeah. So for 6 flats, we got 48k net for 10 years, on a lease. The commercial valuation, and I think you're going to get. Are you going to look at valuers and brokers and all of that?
We're going to definitely do a broker session because it's such a specialist area and it's such a stumbling point for everyone doing this kind of work, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like any strategy, any property strategy, the exit is all about the end done up value for us. We've got to make the deals work. As much as we're providing this service and it's ethical and it's great, it's still a business. We've got to make the deals stack up.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the commercial valuation that we were getting on these properties was times 10, times 12 as a commercial valuation on the rent roll.
Right.
So worked really, really well for us. It's pretty much a money out deal for us, this one.
Fabulous.
So really good. And the facts of these supported livings, no voids, no management, no maintenance. Now, the one thing about no maintenance is we actually do pick up the maintenance for the first year. Right. Because it's a brand new refurbed property and because there'll be a builder's guarantee behind it. So we always say, and it's basically, it's building relationships. It's a goodwill gesture, excuse me. So we say to him, we'll make sure that we look after anything that goes wrong within the first 12 months, you know, kitchen cabinets jamming or leaks or defects or anything like that.
Do you take on the general maintenance as well on a business point of view? Because I know a few builders who will do that, who, because of maybe the higher rate of damages and stuff, will then, it's actually quite a good business model. They'll then carry on maintaining the building because there will be heavier damages to some of these buildings.
Yeah, we get it built into our leases that any damage by the tenants will be looked after by the housing association, by the...
Yeah, no, absolutely. From a cost point of view, sorry, I meant as a, you know, so my builder's carried on doing the maintenance in the property that we own. So from his point of view, he's then got an ongoing job there maintaining that property because the tenant will damage it.
Yeah, sorry, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So our RPs will use our contractors. Perfect. So the electrical contractor who did the full M&E installation will be responsible, will go forward with them because he knows the system, you know, he's got the as-built drawings. There's no one better to go in to work out what's happening with the place than the guy who put it in. So yes, we make sure we build those relationships that our team will then go on and work, but paid by them.
Which makes it great work for the guys, doesn't it, what you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. They get the ongoing work for it as well. Mm-hmm. But we also make sure that within the lease that we get like a 5-year tidy up of the property, so external decoration, and you have the usual things written into the lease, like we'll get the property back in the condition that we get handed it over. Mm-hmm. So all of that is about, you know, making sure it's all in there in a really good, solid, strong lease.
Yeah.
So
brilliant. That looks like a great one.
No, it's good. It was our first one. And then, you know, that kind of helps us build the relationships. And they said, basically, if you can carry this model forward and keep providing these, then we'll keep coming and asking for them.
Brilliant.
Which is what we want. Absolutely superb.
And then when you're handing it over to the care provider, is there anything else specific within that point that you...
It's just obviously making sure that all the governance is correct, all the certification, the compliance. Also, the one thing being new on this one, like 5-6 years ago, I wasn't aware of the ongoing kind of certification and carrying on with making sure that everything's in place, and who was going to take responsibility for it. So on this particular one, I was going in yearly and doing the fire system upgrades, making sure, doing the testing. Now being a bit wiser and older and more experienced at dealing with these guys, you make sure that that's in the lease, that is their responsibility. And ultimately, you've got to remember that this is your property. You want it to be looked after. You want to make sure it complies. You want to make sure all the boxes are ticked. So you want a copy of everything. As much as we trust these guys and we do our due diligence on the care providers and the housing associations, we need to make sure that we're getting a copy if we're handing over responsibility of the property for our records.
Oh, you mean of like the gas safety test, the fire test, all of that stuff? I think that's a really valid point for people, because I think people think, oh, it's a hands-off. I've handed it over to them for 5 years. I don't need to think about it. But I think that's really valid. Yeah.
No. Make sure that you set up your systems, in the office, that you know when these dates are coming, that you're making sure, they'll be chasing you if they want the certification. So you make sure you're chasing them to make sure that they've got all the certification in place and all the compliance. And you also get copies for your records.
Yeah. I think that's really, really valid.
Yeah.
Should we go back to main screen? Or
Yeah.
We're done on those ones. So one of the things I know people are really keen to find out from you. Oh, we've got can you end share?
Yeah, why is that not going?
At the bottom, you should just be able to stop share.
I'm on there.
It's a good picture.
Yeah. There we go. So I've got pause share, stop share.
Yeah, there we go. Again, that's better. Fabulous. So we've done about handing it over. So I know that people are really keen, because of the experience that you've had, to talk about your lease negotiation and tips on that. I know that was something that people are really keen to hear from you.
Yeah. So again, because I was quite new to it, so the first lease that I did, I was quite naive. Now, the one thing I've seen in the group as well is people asking, or in the past, people have asked for a copy of the lease.
Yes.
It's not us that provide the lease, right? It's the RP that should provide the lease. I think I'll go back to the start. When you're negotiating a lease, you've got to understand, in this model that I've got, and every model's different, I'll keep emphasizing that. In the model I got, there's 3 people involved in the relationship over the property. There's the care provider, there's the RP/housing association, and then there's us as the investors, as the property owners, landlords. The lease agreement is between us and the RP. The RP then has a management agreement with the care provider. We as the landlords will be named on the management agreement with the care provider, but we don't have a direct relationship other than we've agreed. Basically, it's basically the right to sublet. That's what the lease agreement is. The lease agreement will be drawn up by the housing association. We have the right, and I think we were talking about this earlier today, weren't we, where we'll go back and we can have things added in. Now, and as you said, Lisa, that's not quick.
It's not, no.
Yeah.
We had one small tweak to make on ours because our mortgage provider requested it, and it took ages, had to go through different levels of solicitors, governance and everything else to make that very small tweak. So absolutely, it's in their court, not your court.
Yeah. But a really, really good point there, that you need to adjust the lease to suit your requirements. And if you need to ask for something or you want it put in, then ask for it. Yeah. Ours have always been really, really accommodating to make sure it works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. They were very accommodating. It's just that it took time and levels of procedure within the organisation to do that. Absolutely. Yeah.
And as you said there, the finance broker at the back end is so critical.
Yeah.
And if they require something in there, you need to make sure that you get it in. So I would say that's one of the biggest things, is make sure that you put into these leases what you can.
Yeah. I suppose getting it read by your mortgage broker and your mortgage, whoever's going to provide your finance further on, make sure they've had a look at it as early as you can, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Shall we cover the bit on the about the finance now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, should we jump in with this?
We've fallen into finance, haven't we?
So one of the scariest things that hit me on this, and it really was like kind of a proper punch, was once we'd actually moved forward, we'd signed the pre-agreement, we got the lease in place, and then finally I turned around and informed my finance broker. We were doing supported living. I think it was assisted living we were calling it at the time.
Yeah.
And he just says, there's hardly anybody in the market that will do mortgages or commercial lending on these. 6 years ago, it was really, really hard. I believe it is opening up.
Keep telling me that, but I'm not seeing masses of evidence. But that's one of the reasons I want to get the brokers on. I feel like
absolutely. I'm all over that. You know, get the brokers in and see exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
But what that taught me was the importance of sorting your exit out. A lot of us will do these developments on bridging, on investors funding, on other people's money, all the different types of ways of funding our developments. If you go and sign a lease and you put yourself on C2 as well, and then the funder turns around and says, we can't get you anything. The lender turns around, sorry, the broker turns around and says, we can't get you out of this deal. Then you know, you're going to be in a whole load of trouble. So right from the very start, it's critical that you engage a conversation with your broker and find out the appetite to take on your schemes. And therefore, if there's tweaks that are needed in leases, if there's certain lease lengths required, if they don't like break clauses, is there an Armageddon clause built in there? If the care provider walks away, the whole thing falls down. All of these things need to be taken into consideration and then get the approval of your lender. Only at that point should you then consider signing your lease. So I'd say the biggest thing is making sure that you have the structure in place of your exit before you get too carried away with the lease.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Negotiating the lease, in one way you need to do that because that is rent roll. So you need to have the conversations to dictate what your rent rolls will be, get those approved, and then that will help you with the commercial valuation and then your broker to move forward with the lending. So it is a little bit chicken and egg, but it's just trying to find out that natural order. Getting a verbal agreement, find out what the rent roll will be. That will allow you to get your commercial valuation, talk to the lender, make sure you've got a offer in principle, then go forward with the lease. So I'd say just make sure you get that all in a nice staged format.
And that sounds really easy the way you say it, and in reality when you're working those things that doesn't fall that easily, does it? It's
not at all. We use Lloyd's. All our supported living is with Lloyd's, and I thought each time we do it they get easier and easier. No, it's still just as hard. They seem to think of something new every time to come nagging you for. They want to know everything, you know, especially due diligence on the care provider.
Yeah.
And even due diligence on the housing association as well, because there is rogue ones out there.
There are. I think that's a really key message. Is just because they're registered doesn't mean they're good. I think I've banged on about that a few times, but I really think people need to be aware of it.
Yeah. It's all well and good going out and negotiating, trying to get as high a rent as you possibly can and as long a lease as you possibly can, which a lot of these rogue ones will give you. They don't care.
No.
You know, they'll hand them out 10 a penny. But the real long-term, steady, solid guys are the ones that will say, okay, we'll give you a 5-year, we'll give you a 10-year, we'll give you a rent that we know is sustainable. A really good tip, and I've only realised this recently, is you can get your leases index linked.
Okay.
So when you negotiate that good rent at the front end, but please make sure you negotiate an index link rent rise on a yearly basis. That can make a hell of a difference. So rather than pushing really hard at the front end, just be happy with that rent rise and get a nice, steady rent. If you know it's going to work for the valuation, then...
I think, again, it really varies from housing association to housing association, doesn't it? Because others have there's one that I know of who'll give you a higher rent for the first 2 years. So over the 5 years, it will average out because you won't get the rent rise over the 5 years. So it evens out. But they're very upfront about that and talking about that with you, so you know how it works.
Yeah, I ended up sitting down and doing a calculation of 5-year index linked and 5-year a fixed rent rise, and then level over the 5 years. And so the index linked one hands down.
Is it? Yeah.
So you need to sit down and evaluate what you're looking for and where you want to be. But if you negotiate hard on the first lease, because it gets harder to negotiate a release, a new lease, than it does to negotiate a new
For
lease.
that first within that one property, rather than each time you work with that provider. Do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you hand over your new developments, make sure that you get that good deal right at the front end. Make sure it's sustainable. It's a good one. They're a good reputable provider, a good care provider, a good RP.
How would you know that, Russ? What would you say if someone's a complete newbie and they're kind of going, well, how do I know? What would I do to find out if they're any good? What would you say?
You do all your normal checks, just like you'd be doing if you were doing a JV with a business partner. You'd be checking them out. You'd be going on company house. You'd be checking their accounts. You do all the usual stuff you would do if it was a JV partner. You would also speak to other people within the sector. You would check out their social media, their website, looking at all the evidence that's out there. There is so much stuff out there. Brilliant. The longer they've been in business, then to me, that's more of a solid foundation.
Yeah.
If they're a new charity, because again, you've got all the different spectrum of this supported living. If it's a brand new charity, then are the lenders going to look at that as a solid foundation compared to a multinational care provider that has been around for 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
It's like getting a lease with Tesco's and getting a lease with Tommy's Corner Shop.
Yeah.
The commercial valuation and the lender at the back end is always going to be looking for that stronger foundation. So yeah, definitely do your due diligence on these guys. And just talking to people within the network, we've got this beautiful group that you set up, best part of 600 investors on there. There's a lot of very, very experienced investors in there as well, which is fantastic. I don't think any of us claim to know everything.
No.
And we're always looking to learn and use each other's guidance and get tips. So just speaking and saying, like, listen, who's used a care provider in this area? We're going forward with this care provider. Has anybody else used them? What do you think? Are you happy with them?
Absolutely. I think, like you say, there's masses of experience within the group, isn't there? And I think asking the question. Yeah. And would you get a solicitor to read through your lease? Would you?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It's just like getting your legal pack on your properties. If you're buying at auction, you only get the guys to check everything out, make sure that you're covered.
Yeah.
You need somebody to look at it on your behalf.
Absolutely.
And the more you do, the more you'll get the confidence to start adding your own clauses in there and fighting for your corner to get what you need.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the other side of it, is you don't have to just accept everything that they
No,
pay.
you don't. Absolutely not.
I think just for everyone listening, if people want to start putting questions in for you, I think we'll start coming to some questions in a minute, because I'm sure people are going to have questions for you, Russ.
No problem.
While people are, where do people find you? What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Russ? Because I'm sure people will want to connect with you and ask you more stuff later.
Well, the easiest way is through the group. If people just click on my profile and they can direct message me. So if anybody kind of wants any advice, if I can help them with, one of the things we've got is a project management company. So with our experience in the commercial to residentials, we do a lot of that on the project management, but with the niche of supported living and our experience within supported living as well, then we can really help with the developments. Anything like big HMOs right through to, you know, the larger commercials or even the new builds. We've got the experience and the knowledge to help with those within this sector.
And that's really valuable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having that
I'll
knowledge.
put up my slide at the end with our contact details and email address.
Right, here we go. We've got some questions coming in.
Cool.
Why do you think some housing associations are not registered? My understanding was they all had to be, but maybe I've missed something.
Yeah, I've not really heard of that.
No,
Can they class themselves as?
Yeah, I don't know if they're not supposed to be calling themselves housing associate. Well, they're not supposed to be calling themselves registered providers. That's a protected title, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know whether they can get involved in the leases between the landlords if they're not registered, between a landlord and a care provider. They can get within that kind of triangle of contracts.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Be interesting to find out where that comes from, whether there's more stuff. Right, hang on. Got any more questions? Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things. That's the problem with trying to do. Any tips on how to introduce ourselves to housing associations? It's not always easy to find out who needs what. This is a lot of conversations we've been having recently, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it comes back to Amy was saying last week on her interview. It's about relationships. It's about building those relationships. It's really hard to get through the door of a new housing association or even speaking to care providers. One of the strongest ways I found of finding people was LinkedIn. If you put in your LinkedIn search for people within the supported living industry or care industry, you'll find a lot of people that you can start talking to. I'd say that's one of the strongest things. I also agree with what Amy was saying about going to local authority network events, finding out within this kind of sector when they're hosting events within the care sector. That's a really good feed in as well. Social workers are a really good feed in as well.
And other care providers, you know, like occupational therapists and other care team who are going to be involved with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who's kind of dealing with the aftercare of patients. Again, this is really in my sector, but when the patients are placed, there's always social workers involved. They'll always come out, check the property out for their particular tenant, make sure everything suits. So building relationships within the social working network as well.
Yeah, absolutely. With commercial conversion with this sector, do you pay VAT?
Any commercial to residential conversion is 5% rating anyway.
Okay, I found this on the web for as 0 is as 5% rating anyway.
That's kind of Siri to help you
There's
out.
always listening in, aren't they?
So it's just it doesn't change if you're doing supported living as your exit. It would be depending on the build.
Yeah, not under my understanding of it. You know, it's just be the normal rates. I don't think there's any special exempt.
No.
But I stand to be corrected on that.
This is a planning question.
Anybody knows better, please post it.
Yeah, absolutely. If we've got an accountant or anything around who's got...
Yeah, absolutely.
Russ, do you know if an HMO with 6 tenants and a member of staff that's on a rolling 24-hour shift would fall within C3B, or would that fall within C2? Would it depend on the kind of residence and the kind of care provided?
Yeah. Because you'd be licensed, then I think it's going to be more in the C2. Because over 5 people you need the licensing.
Yeah.
So even on a care HMO. So I think it's going to be more under C2. But there again, you've got to be thinking about your exit lending and what the lender is going to be asking for. So it's like when you're doing your HMOs. Yeah. A lot of lenders will insist that you go to C4.
Yeah.
Rather than keeping them on C2.
If I remember correctly, this is to do with care leavers, this one, I think. If it's the person I'm thinking of,
Yeah, so I think it needs to... So it's more care leavers.
I think this is one that Rob's talking about, is one that's going to be for care leavers,
Right.
but we'll have 24-hour staff.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, a sneaky little Instagram to Linda Wright will soon answer that. And if you get an answer off her, can you post it in the group?
Okay.
That would be good.
There's a challenge for you, Rob.
Actually, I might do that myself. Actually.
Okay. Should not be bombarded with people asking.
Yeah.
Donna said, housing management services are not registered, but they can do a similar role. They just can't claim exempt rents with local authorities. Not everyone will work with them. So that's back to that question. What's your thoughts on setting up a lease option for 10 years? Then you decide to sell on your property and the whole package, saying 2, 3 or 6 years into the deal to another investor. Do you need to add something in the lease from the start that you can sell it on?
Yes, you probably need to put a right to assign in the lease.
Yeah.
So it's like any standard lease option. You would always make sure that you have a right to assign.
And so it's getting that lease option written by someone who really gets the lease option.
And it's, if you're going to do this kind of strategy using like a lease option, or even doing it on a rent to rent, you need to make sure there's a lot of symmetry between the lease that you have from the housing association and the one that you're going to give to the landlord or to the person you're purchasing from. So you need a bloody good lawyer.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, good strategy, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good exit, isn't it?
Yeah.